It's me.
She's a former mayor. They're a former evangelical pastor with dissociative identity disorder. These two like to talk about the topics you're not supposed to talk about. They might cause you to perspire just a bit, but they'll definitely make you inspired. Let's talk religion and politics, and what spirituality and emotional well-being look like in a post-evangelical world. This is Paul and Ashley on Evangelicalish.
That sound funky on your end, or was it just my end?
It sounded fine on my end. In fact, I'm thinking it's a big signal to our amazing listeners that we played the open this week, because last week we're like, no, we can't. We are a little more spirited this week, shall we say. Last week we're like, don't play the peppy opening. This is like the worst day in a long time. So yeah,
we were in a little bit of mourning last week.
Yeah, last week was rough, but here we are. We're playing the open. That's a good sign.
And where in the world is Ashley this week?
Okay, I find myself in our nation's capital tonight. I am in Washington, D.C. I've been here since Monday and flying back home tomorrow. And if you're watching this live stream or you're watching a recorded video, you can tell that I'm in front of a hotel window and like you can see the back of my head. So now I'm very worried that I didn't style the back of my hair today, but hopefully not visible too much to all of you. But yeah, I'm in my hotel room and yeah, it's late here. It's 9 o'clock at night. So we be tired.
Yeah. So you're learning what it's like to do the show on the East Coast.
I know. We expected so much of Jim Fallows, who joined us last week. If you haven't had a chance to download and listen, you really should. Jim Fallows is one of the most respected and hallowed chroniclers of U.S. democracy, worked for Jimmy Carter, still stays in touch with the family, writes for The Atlantic, has lived overseas for a while. And we had him on with us last week, giving us his hot takes from the election. It was a very sobering night. So that is available to download and listen to.
And very interesting that he saw Christian nationalism coming way back in the Jimmy Carter administration. So
it's like and there wasn't such a word for it back then, right? But like as you've been kind of like pulling on these threads and figuring out where did this version of Christian nationalism in the US, where did it start? It's like we were seeing it like it's about 50 plus years ago. And he's like, yeah, I remember the moment. Remember he told that story. He's like, I remember when we walked into this one event and I heard this one thing, and like that was the beginning of kind of everything's changing. So
yeah, pretty crazy. One other thing before we want to get to our guest and have plenty of room, but did you see the picture? I saw the picture, I think in the New York Times, on the New York Times website, of Joe Biden welcoming Donald Trump to the White House today.
The answer to your question is no, I did not. And there is a whole reason for that. But say what you will about that picture.
Well, I sent it out in the announcement that about this podcast as well. And it struck me as, I don't know if I could do that if I were Joe Biden. I really don't.
I got you.
But that we're talking about Trump as the Christian. What's that?
Flip the switch, play the role, just like play the part, right? Yeah.
I mean, was he doing that, or was Biden being a Catholic? Was he doing the love your enemies thing and being kind even when it hurt? It was painful for him. Whatever it looked very Christian what he did
It looked very
greet
Christ-like
at the White House the very man who didn't do the same for him 4 years ago.
Oh my God, that was very Jesus-like. Thank you, President Biden. Can I tell one?
And then there's a part of me that's like, is he handing over the keys to the kingdom to the guy who will never give them back too? So it was just a whole mix of emotions.
Also, not just the keys, but apparently the remote control on the weather. Like, did that happen today?
Matt Gaetz is now nominated to be our Attorney General. We are definitely living in the upside down world. But we should get to our guest and get their input on this too, don't you think?
Dark rabbit hole, y'all. So we're gonna try to stay focused and bring some really wonderful conversation and resource to where I think probably if you're listening to this, you probably are right now. So yeah, let's get to our guest.
So Joe Weston is with us, and Joe is in Washington, D.C., just like you are, which is great. And Joe is going to talk to us about Fierce Civility, which is the name of one of his books, which is one of the Amazon bestsellers in 14 categories. Joe has a career that spans 30 years in the fields of conflict prevention, leadership, stress management, communication. He is a highly sought after facilitator, coach for individuals, corporations, government agencies, and nonprofits around the world. His organization, the Weston Network, the nonprofit Fierce Civility Project, has clients like NASA, the World Bank, Oxfam, Booz Allen Hamilton, PBS, just amazing work all over the world, and has served as an adjunct professor at Georgetown University. And his first book was Mastering Respectful Confrontation. So Joe has been dealing in this space of loving our enemies for a long time. So save us, Joe, from this world that we're in.
I feel like doing the slow clap right now. It's like,
there you go. I love that.
Yes.
First of all, I want to know, I didn't check the back of my hair either, so I hope it's okay. And I'm my running joke is when people say, where do you live? I say, I live in Washington, D.C. Have you heard of it? Anyway, so great to be here. It really is.
We met during COVID virtually.
Yeah.
And you had, I don't know if it was recently at that time or somewhere, you had lived in Europe and you moved back to the United States to be part of the healing of our country. Am I correct?
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah, I grew up in New York City. I was born and raised in New York City. And I always say, when people say, Joe, why are you so attracted to confrontation and conflict? I say, well, I grew up in New York City. Every day is an examination of confrontation and conflict. And also just to share that it was a pretty sometimes violent childhood when my dad was in jail when I was around 12 years old. So I've been tracking all my life. I've been tracking conflict and the question that I always had as a kid even, and that has been the through line of all my work, is why is it even though we know better, we have arguments and fights, and on a larger scale, crime and war and hunger? I mean, we're a relatively intelligent species. We can see like close-up pictures of Pluto. We can see into the smallest of atoms, but we haven't figured out that even though we know better, we still have arguments and fights. And most people would say that's just the way we are, and that's an accurate answer, but I was never satisfied with that answer. So it's really trying to understand human behavior and what is motivating us. And that's
Can I jump in and interrupt for just one sec? So sure. You're differentiating conflict from like war and a fist fight. A fist fight and conflict are different.
No, they're the same. It's just, okay. I would say, arguments and fights, I would say that's what people are doing at work or at Thanksgiving dinner, and crime and hunger and takeover of a nation. That's not usually happening on the Thanksgiving dining room table.
Although there are territorial wars at Thanksgiving.
Yes, sure. that is true. But I do delineate between confrontation and conflict.
Okay, gotcha.
And that's what helps me to know, because the essence of my work is that we're not going to see changes happen if we don't train ourselves to be skillful and strategic in the messiness of intimacy, in the messiness of difficult conversations, of healing, of reconciliation. And new solutions have only emerged in our world from messy situations. And we're in a time right now where we have been programmed to always seek out comfort. And we actually get angry, and we actually create systems that harm others to make sure that we have comfort. Not all of us have comfort. And therefore we're not wired anymore to be able to be in the messiness and the challenges. And I think that's what's causing a lot of the issues right now, and in terms of what's happening. But yeah, so I was born in New York City and did my university time there. Ended up in the Netherlands. I was there for 18 years, where I did a lot of, my spiritual quest, which had to do with my Tai Chi was a very important shift for me. My Taoist practice, different levels of Taoist alchemy, and my Tibetan Buddhist practice, which I've been doing now for over 30 years, the Tai Chi for 40 years, and studying Christian mysticism and the Kabbalah and many different traditions, which have helped me inform my work, even in corporations. I don't necessarily make references to the Bible or something, but the depth of the work is helping people feel in their bodies what compassion is. Not a concept, not a hallmark Cardi idea of love and compassion, not what you might hear on a Sunday sermon, but literally in your body and every fiber of your being, becoming compassion in action. And it's a training. People train for years, and I've been training for years, because part of that training is overcoming a lot of our conditioning and a lot of our instant need to fight or flight or freeze, or our need to be an aggressor or aggressive or passive. I mean, there's a lot of things about that, but that's the nature of the work. And I did a lot of work in the Middle East, working with women's rights organizations and understanding what's happening there, and in Asia and in Eastern Europe. And I always say I'm most proud of the fact that I worked for years with severely wounded combat veterans in this country and incarcerated men. And I learned so much from the combat veterans and understanding the depth of compassion in action, of a commitment to loyalty, the commitment to true sacrifice. And I just said this the other day in a post for November 11th for Veterans Day. They can't choose who they're fighting for, right? If they're racist, or if they have problems with transgender people or whatever, or religion, they can't say, I'm going to go out onto the battlefield and only fight for those citizens. They're fighting for all citizens, and they do it fully. And I think we all could learn something from that to be able to transcend that.
Okay, so I could literally ask you like 1,000 questions in the next 30 minutes. Like everything you just said is a trail that I want us to go down. Sure. So I'm just imagining like folks who are, downloading, listening to this podcast. I mean, we're coming off the heels of this election. We are, feeling more divided as a nation probably than any time in our lives. Maybe we've heard stories about similarly divided times, but I don't think we've lived through such things. All the stories of how people are processing the election results last week, whether they are triumphant because now they believe Jesus is the president of the United States, or they're like, some of our family members crying and planning to move to Europe and feeling so betrayed and feeling so personally betrayed and affronted by the electorate last week. And then a bunch of us that are just in the middle, like, what the fuck do we do? So help us. Like, that's the sort of the finger painting right now. It's like all this stuff is on the canvas. Can you, what do we now do? And let's start with that.
Well, I tend to start broad and I'll get specific, to give a context, I do a lot of, you mentioned I work for NASA, and I love working with engineers, because my work is really about, if there is a problem arising, there has to be a root cause to that problem, right? That's root cause analysis. Engineers love that, even in human behavior. And one of the subtitles for the respectful confrontation work is respectful confrontation. It's never about the dishes, right? So there are deeper issues, and that's where the healing and reconciliation happens. That's where deepening relationship happens, when you can get past the initial thing that you're fighting over, and somehow think that after 10 years of telling the person the same way, you didn't do the dishes, you should do them, that this time it's going to be different, when it never is, to consider maybe we need to find a way to get in here and see what's under this. Mm-hmm. So what is the context? I've been tracking this for years now. The first work was respectful confrontation, which is more about how do we confront aspects of ourselves or those are close to us to get to deeper relationships and new solutions. But I was tracking that the world was shifting and that the bullies were really being rewarded, and that we were losing a sense of what could be some sense of civility. And that's where I started developing the fear civility work. And what I was tracking is a global situation. There's so much change and transition that's been happening. And if you are not skilled or aware of that and don't have a map to get through the transitions, then you are just stuck in a fight, flight, freeze response. And what that causes is it causes us to close our hearts. Our hearts cannot be open if we are in a fight, flight, freeze response. So the world system has done a great job of keeping us dysregulated so that we can't access our hearts. And when I mean access our hearts, I mean access our wisdom. Not just our feelings, but access our wisdom. Because if it's our intellect is not helping us, we're using our intellect to justify the genocide of people around the planet. It's not our hearts that are doing it. If our hearts are open, we wouldn't for a second allow that to happen. So we're in a world system that is doing a great job of keeping us dysregulated and is keeping us isolated and separate, which is making us feel powerless and helpless. And I say to people that the most rebellious thing that we can do, really revolutionary thing we can do, is train ourselves to keep our nervous systems regulated, our own self-care, and radically reach out and deepen relationships you already have, and seek out new relationships to create new alliances in surprising places. That is key right now because we're so polarized. So, the work I do is to identify internal polarization that's causing stagnation, and external. And one of the ones you've already mentioned is that we're stuck in a pattern of where either we have friend or foe, right? Loved one or enemy. And we're good at loving our loved ones in a sense, in a sense. But one of the things I've said for decades now is that if only hanging out with people were going to solve our world problems, we would have solved our world problems. It's not working. Mm-hmm. We have to engage with others and get different perspectives. So the pivot, and then you have people who say, love thy enemy. That's too scary for people. And for some people who have been marginalized and oppressed for centuries, why should they have to love their enemy?
Right.
So that's why we're not seeing the love happening. So what I say, I'm always finding a pivot. That's where my martial arts comes in. We get in the stagnation of love thy loved ones, love thy enemy. We're in a stagnation. The pivot is love thy stranger.
Okay.
That if you sat down and did an inventory, how many people would be on your loved one list? Maybe 100 to 1,000. I'm not sure. How many enemies? I mean, generally speaking, would be maybe 1,000. There are 8 billion people on this planet. You can't tell me that of the 8 billion people that you can't find 3 or 4 people in your immediate area that you can't build relationship with, who have different views from you, and where you align is not in what religion you have, or what your political beliefs are, or who you decide who someone should love or not, but you're allying on the basic sense of we can be decent to each other and with each other. Basic values of respect, of dignity.
If I can jump in, sure. I love that because one thing I'm hearing from Christians now is, Romans 13 says that God puts people in authority, so you have to pray for President Trump now. And I'm like, I didn't really hear you guys saying that the last 4 years, but but it's like, you have to love your enemy. And I love what you say there, because I just was talking with somebody today and they're like, well, that's really easy to say when you're a white person. But for some of us, we don't have that luxury. We don't get to do that. And I love that.
And their job. And it's not their job.
Right. And so that's really cool. And what you're talking about, I think you talked about in your TED Talk. Can I show this clip? Would that be a good time to show this in your interaction with Sam, the prisoner now?
Sure.
Okay. This is from Joe's TED Talk. And he's talking about going into a prison to teach meditation and how he deals with a confrontation. So let's let's check this out. And I think this just is a really good, tangible example of what you're talking about. And I really love it. So here it is.
And then while the other men are setting up, one of the inmates approaches me. My name's Sam, and gives me the rundown about how he's been leading the group before me. He then says, "That's my seat over there," pointing to a chair at the front of the room. "You could sit over there." And over there is back with the rest of the chairs where the other men will sit. Now, Sam knows that I've been invited by the prison to lead and teach the group meditation, and that this is most likely not how I would have organized the space. He's clearly establishing himself as the alpha. I feel all the men's eyes on me. My fight, flight, freeze response is fully activated. And I know that the choice that I'm about to make will determine the success or failure of my future work with these men. So what do? Do I get up in Sam's face and say, "I decide where I sit"? Yeah, I don't think that would go over very well. Or I guess I do what I've done so often in the past, which is back down, be nice, and say something like, "Oh, okay, Sam, no worries. I'll sit over here." But wait, does that really solve the problem? How can I effectively teach and gain the men's trust if Sam's calling all the shots? Come on, Joe. There's got to be other options. Okay, here we go. Hey guys, before we get started, I just want to say how excited I am to be working with you, and I really appreciate your dedication to learning and self-development. And Sam, I'm grateful to you for being such an important force with this group. Okay, that seems to lower the tension a bit. Now, I'm really looking forward to sharing these meditation techniques with you in the same way that I learned them from my teachers in order to give you the most authentic experience. And I look Sam in the eyes. Are you open to trying that? Okay.
All right. Well, I can stop it there. And if you want to share more about what happened there, Joe, you can.
What? I want to know what happened. Are you kidding me?
There's just a couple of more minutes. Just a
Couple more minutes. Okay. All right.
Play it.
All right. Let me get it back on. Okay, here we go.
Well, in that case, I'd like to slightly rearrange how we're sitting. They agree. Great. Okay, so everyone grab a cushion or a chair and let's sit in a circle. Now, I purposely choose a spot that's 90 degrees from Sam's chair in order to pivot away from that point of tension. And then I say to the group, "I'd like to save the spot next to me for Sam." We all look at Sam and we fully exhale, take our seats, and get started. That first class I taught was so beautiful. Okay, I think that's yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That was my first, the context was, that was my first visit. I ended up spending 4 years with those men, and it was so beautiful, the work we did. So we became like brothers.
Yeah.
And that's the nature of the work. Yeah.
Can you backtrack just a little bit? Because I really want to make sure I'm tracking with this. It's come up a lot in like Paul's and my conversations. Like, explain again how when you're dealing with historically marginalized people, and like the pain, that like the truth of all of that, and then our national context and like wokeism is dead and like all this kind of stuff. Like, explain again that it's not the job of the marginalized folks to help bridge. I struggle with how to put together those conversations in our own community, let's say.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm the right spokesperson for that, but just from what I've learned a lot from people I've worked with who are doing remarkable work, and what I hear from them is that I saw a meme somewhere that said slavery was not a black problem, it was a white problem. That why should it be the victims who are the ones who have to solve the problem? That's basically it. And because it's usually the marginalized people who are doing all the hard work to educate, to change, to transform. And when is it the time of people who have the privilege or in the power to be able to stop and say, okay, maybe I can let go of some of my need to hoard all of the power and share it, and just find collaborative ways to do it. It's tricky though, because, and this is a lot of what I think is playing out right now, is that one of the things that one of the questions, this title is about reviving the global heart. And I just want to say that, for me, that's an important concept that I bring up in Fierce Civility. The global heart is the human family, and that we have always been and always and currently are and always will be completely and fundamentally interdependent and interconnected. We've never not been. And and thinking that we are not is an illusion, the illusion of separation. And that's what's causing the harm, is the othering. And not just othering from the perspective of race and things like that, but simply the fact that we place people in categories. And part of the work of getting out of our heads and into our hearts is that those rigid labels, they fall away. They don't exist in the heart. They just can't. And when you can truly tap into your humanity and the humanity of another, there's no way to do harm to each other. So this idea of the global heart is the human family. And I say the human family, the global heart is not well. Just like a heart doctor would say, this is not well. And my prognosis of that is that the reason why the global heart, the world system, is not well is because it's a system that over decades, maybe even centuries, has cultivated that is technologically overfed and spiritually malnourished. It's as simple as that. Like a doctor would say, if you're going to continue to eat fast food and not exercise, you're going to die. You're going to get a heart attack and die. It's not that complicated. And all the choices we're making now, including the lack of civility and including the world leaders that we're seeing around the world, is a culture that is just traumatized by its own overfeeding of the technological and underfeeding of the spiritual. And for me, the spiritual is, the technological is the intellect. It's the facts. It's all of that. It's valuing technology more than people, than humanity. It's valuing your 401k and a monetary system and profit over the health and well-being of individuals or the planet itself. And that the spiritual aspect of that at the heart is where our wisdom resides, is where we already know that we have common ground and we are connected. There's no doubt. And where we move from that place. And so what we're seeing play out right now is that when we're in that, like I said, we're stuck in a fight, flight, freeze response. And what we're seeing is that there are many people in this country and the world who think that fight is going to make things change. And I'm saying this trying to say this without judgment, simply assessment, and that's not working. Fighting the system only feeds the system. So I have a lot of challenges with what's coming from the left in this idea of we're going to fight this, we're going to fight and we're going to win. Why do you think that that's not going to turn people off? Like, because if you say we're going to fight and we're going to win, then someone's going to think I must be the one they want to fight.
Right.
So they've just set up an enemy situation. And so some people are in the fight mode. Some people are in the flight mode, which is they're fleeing to a time when they thought things were great, right? Or they're getting caught up in the internet and their habits and their addictions. And most of us are in a freeze response, where we would want to do something, but we don't know what to do. And that those are the people that I'm trying to appeal to, because I believe truly one of the polarities we have to break is you really can't say and be accurate and say half the country did this, because it's not true. Why is that not true? Because only 56 million people voted in this election. That's less than half of the population of the United States. So you could say that, and more than half of the people who voted for Trump, but that's only a quarter of the nation. right? So it's or 30%. So
I actually looked it up. I think it was about 21% of the American people voted for Trump, and then if we have 11 million undocumented, so it's even smaller population of everybody that's here. But
yeah,
21%. Yeah.
but that's where I'm saying we have these. The media does a lot of this, but we also do it to ourselves. Is that already gives me more peace
Yeah.
to know it's not half the country, it's 20 to 30%, and and so there's maybe that many on one side, and on the left you might have maybe the same amount, but there's a majority in the middle. And I'm not talking political middle. I'm talking about people who genuinely believe in civility and genuinely can transcend all the issues that are polarized, and that if we can find a way to unite, particularly again with strangers, then we become stronger, and these elements on the extremes become weaker.
So I think Sherry in the comments on the comment string here on the live stream has a great question. What about the idea of righteous anger, Sherry asks, that mobilize us to action? What do you think about that, Joe?
If it mobilizes you into action to have beneficial results, that's great. If it's righteous and it's if it's anger has a lot of energy and power to it. Yes, but my viewpoints from my traditions and from a spiritual perspective, if you're harming someone in that thing, then that's not righteous anymore. That's self-righteous. That's contradictory to the very thing you're probably trying to fight for.
Can you just say that again, that it's the difference between righteous and self-righteous?
Yeah, I'm just saying that now. Is that I don't know. I would have to. Is it Shelby? I'm not sure. I missed
Sherry.
Sherry. I love the question, and I would love to know more what you mean by righteous. But from when I hear that righteous anger as a concept, if that gets you off your couch, if that gets you to vote, if that gets you to meet some strangers and connect with them and create a deeper union with people that are different, if that gets you out to support people and to help shift the pattern of lack of civility to civility, do it. Great. But many of us are using this sense of placing ourselves in the role of victim. I think that's the big issue right now. Yes, there are people who are victimized and who are oppressed, and I'm not referring to them. I'm talking to people who take on the stance of victim. What that does, unfortunately, there's violence in that, because if we truly believe we're victims, that somehow gives us the permission to justify harming others, or creating more fight in that. And I would say, from my traditions, that's from a spiritual perspective, that's not righteous anymore. If you have to fight to protect, if someone's coming at your children and you have to protect your children, I don't even think that's righteous anger. I think that's just a genuine sense of protector to say, not my kids, which is fine. I'm not talking about that. So I'm curious what you guys think about that.
Well, it like Ashley said, we have this conversation on an ongoing basis of, and I hear a lot of people often saying, the people that voted for Trump, they think they're doing the right thing, or that, and so, to go to an extreme example, the guys that flew the planes into the Twin Towers thought they were doing the right thing. They believed they were doing what God wanted them to do. Hamas on October 7th, I'm sorry to use this as, but they believed they were doing what they needed to do to protect their family and their people. And so it's hard for me. And again, I apologize. I know it's hard to make that comparison between a Trump voter and the October 7th attackers. And so please forgive me for that. But that's my point, is using this extreme to say,
sure,
people often think they're doing the right thing when they are harming people. And even my feed on my social media has ratcheted up exponentially since the election, with people saying terrible things to me. They have been enlivened by this. And so I don't know, I guess it's, for me, it's sometimes is that desire to be the holy middle giving space for people to do terrible things.
No,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You have to set your boundaries. The number one thing is you feel safe. In any encounter, you want to feel safe, and whatever you need to do to feel safe. I mean, I would say that I don't know if a lot of people who voted for Trump are actually saying consciously, I did the right thing. I think they just said, I'm voting for what I feel is in alignment with who I am. It's not a question of right or wrong for them. And again, that's another polarity where we get stuck, where we get stagnation. There is no question in here of right or wrong, because that's never going to solve it. All you're going to do is just basically judge. That's it. It drives me insane that people are still saying, oh, that's so terrible what he did or didn't do. Yeah, you knew it is terrible, but what are we going to do after they just get stuck in the judgment? And that's one of the key inner polarities that I think are causing the problem and creating the stagnation, is this inner belief that I am right, and if you have a different viewpoint, you must be wrong. And I was just saying this in another discussion, that even to say I agree, let's agree to disagree, is still kind of violence. Because basically what you're saying when you say let's agree to disagree is my need to be right is more important than us coming up with a solution to this problem. So there's
usually passive aggressiveness taking place there with the agree to disagree thing.
So Paul, I feel like Joe is taking us to school right now.
I'm still trying to figure out how to say, no, you're wrong, Joe. You're wrong.
I know. I can see those wheels turning. Where are you been all my life, Joe? Yeah, this has been a consistent and persistent challenge. I think for us is to be in a world where we are working towards and hoping for community change, outcomes to be different, like the story of whatever the local economy, like for that not to be true. And so then that means some things have to change. Well, then when things are changing, here comes you're breaking the eggs, right? And then so-and-so, such and such powerful interest group says no, don't break my egg. And then we're like, what? How dare you? You unjust, blah, blah, blah. We're going to put you down so we can make the omelet. And it just, we have been living in that cycle in our community and in our place, I think, Paul and I, for a long time. So what you're suggesting is pretty challenging, honestly, to hear. So I just want to note that for the record, for the ish record.
Yeah, no, I get it. It is just challenging for me. I mean, I'm in it, and I'm doing my best to stay regulated, and it's work. That's why all of my work is a training, right? It's like a martial arts training. You're training yourself, to higher levels of belts in a sense. And, and that idea, even if you take the martial arts metaphor a bit further, is that if you just start martial arts and you have a basic background of kicking and punching and blocking and things like that, defending, you're not going to go to a top competition where the best masters in the world are competing. You're going to compete at your level. And I would suggest the same thing in where we're at right now. Don't get into the conversations with people where you just know it's not going to go well. Start with small bridges. John E. Powell from the Othering and Belonging Center, Belonging and Othering Center Institute says that. Start with small bridges. Who can you bridge with? And this is the basis of what I'm seeing happening right now, is that people have created these factions, and it is causing a stagnation. And it's allowing the forces with the power they're doing a great job of not looking at them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have one more kind of follow up to the last 10 minutes, some of the big things I heard you say that I'd love to just kind of double click on for a second. So I heard you say okay, only X% of eligible voters actually voted. So there's a whole bunch of people who didn't co-sign on this person or didn't think this way, et cetera. And that's interesting. I mean, I guess in some ways intuitively I could see just go find people to connect with. But I'm wondering there is a really significant and important role in even those who are very animated on their political side, the, pro-Trump, the anti-Trump, whatever. Like, I think we do actually have to also connect with and shift in those spaces too, because it's just so animates the public square. I don't think we can just like set it aside and go find people who have been kind of out of the loop and try to engage them in a new and different way. So how do you think about like let's imagine in the case of the political right, there's a religion that's connected to it, and there are decades and decades of faith leaders and spiritual leaders telling people things that lead a person to a conclusion that now your duty, if you love Jesus, you will vote for Donald Trump, and you will turn the other way and ignore all these other things because God uses asses, because he used Balaam's ass, and on and on and on. So like we're dealing with
Balaam's ass was a donkey. He didn't like literally use a guy's ass.
Well, all of us in fourth grade, that word when the preacher said Balaam's ass.
When you were a kid, there was a lot of fun to having the King James version of the Bible. Yeah. So
how would you go about, let's say it was your assignment to work I don't know, with the city council that had 4 of 7 members that were like, Jesus said, Trump, I am that, you cannot take my Trump from me. And then you had 3 that were like judging. What would you do?
Well,
if you were advising?
You've got, first of all, you got to get people's nervous systems regulated, right? So, when I'm working with things like that, where I'm working with opposition in groups or factions or something, there's a whole process that goes on before we even just start discussing the issue, right? You got to teach them skills. You got to get people back into their bodies. You got to get people regulated, create some kind of sense of guidelines before you even start. And I think one thing we need to think about, what Trump has done so well, is that he is so deep in our psyches now, and we forget that he's just as impermanent as everything else in the universe.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not just about him, right? So from a world perspective, Europe is upside down with a lot of things that are happening there. They're terrified, and the level of polarization is also extreme. I'm working with colleagues and friends in Italy and the Netherlands and in different parts. The fear of Ukraine being so close. I fear for my friends in Gaza and what's going to happen now, and in just different parts of the world. This is a global trend where people are in such a fear state, and fear is being manipulated. So I would start there, and to just help, to just start from this perspective. That the people on the extremes, you're not going to get them to shift their viewpoints. So the question is, how do you get them to a point where they could just establish some level of basic respect, to remember why they're working together, and to get back to that, not ignore it, but simply take the power away from the extremes of all of that. One of the things that I say with this work is, how do you confront a bully without becoming a bully? And that's what I'm worried about in this global heart that is not well, is that many of us who are good-hearted people and do have spiritual practices and come from a spiritual place are being pulled down into a way of being. And we may not go out and harm others or oppress them, but the things we think and say also has impact. And I think that we all have to take a sharp look at what's happening. And I think that people on the left certainly have to do that. What the question that I think will shift everything in this country, a little bit of hyperbole, but is I would say, to the extreme left, to the woke, to the progressives. The majority of the voters voted for Trump. Some of them are in that, what you're talking about. Can we call it a cult?
Whatever.
Cultish, for sure. The cultish mob.
It's a religious requirement.
Yeah. So, and but there were a lot of people who aren't in that, like what you're naming, Ashley, who still voted for him. And the question to the people on the left is, would you consider why they felt safer with Trump than they did with you? I think if they can ask that question, We can ask that question. They can, and truly spend time trying to think, what have we done, or how have we approached something, or how have we said something that people who are reasonable voted for Trump and not us? Why do they feel safer with him than with us? That would change it. What do you think of that?
Well, I guess my answer probably would be because there some of the postmortem that I'm hearing from people on the left or even the center left or the anti-Trump Republicans are, we saved him from himself 4 years ago, and maybe we should have just let him trash the country so people would have said, because a lot of people are like, oh, you're saying he's this, but he was president before and he didn't do any of these things. And
Right.
so in some ways, I think even asking that question, and this may be where I am cynically at this moment, is we don't have shared information space to work from anymore. And they're going to say, I'm scared of socialism. I'm scared of communism. I'm scared of, illegals, I use, taking over the country, all of these things that aren't really happening, that, yes, like you say, I guess what you're saying is they've been able to be manipulated with fear by the right because they don't trust the story that the left is saying. That's not a true story that you're being told.
Well, I think that's a great point. And I think, but that's the what. So a lot of my work is, I say it's not about the what, but the how. And I would say that it's more about how it's being presented, and I think that's the beauty of, if you can find someone who believes that information, how do you stay in the messy dialogue enough to help that person see that probably some of the things that they are believing isn't true, but are you also willing to learn something new? So one of the pivots that I talk about in this to get over the self-righteousness is my truth doesn't equal the truth. Yet many of us do believe that how we see the world and that our facts, and that, or how we see the facts, that is true. So a lot of times people go into these conversations with a condescension. And instead of thinking, there's got to be something here I can learn. Even if it's just learning more about the psyche of that person who's believing things that really aren't factually true. Think about how rich that is. Think about the compassion in that. Think about the depth of trust and safety you can create with that person who is obviously, if they're believing things that are so obviously not factual and they're still believing it, then from a place of compassion, they are in a fear state. And it's my obligation in my practice to help them out of that. That's what the thing with Sam, to go back to Sam, he wanted to do the alpha thing, and he wanted to create a fight because he wanted to maintain the power or make me submit. And I found a strategy where, and I disarmed Sam's strategy without disempowering him. That's the skill of the work. Because if I'm coming from, because I first regulated my nervous system. That's the practice. That's the tools I use. You find out later in A Cure for Chronic Niceness, the podcast. First step, four tools: regulate the nervous system, meet the other where they are. And meeting him where he is, I realized that he had more at stake in this situation than I did. So I wanted to find a way that I can still stay in my power and still help him, because he was obviously the leader, the alpha of the group. Why can't it be win-win? And in fact, he had to leave the group a year or two later, and the group freaked out, almost like it was a trauma response, because their leader was gone. And I said to them, why don't you share the leadership? And they looked at me like I was from Mars. Because they came from a world situation where there was never shared leadership. So I had to teach them what shared leadership was. But I started that very first session when I invited Sam to sit next to me. I didn't feel threatened. So so it was regulate the nervous system, meet the other where they are. So so how do you talk to these people who are believing that Trump was destined by Jesus? How do you meet them where they are? I don't know. I don't know that world as well as you do. I'd love to be in conversation because I'm always interested in seeing what's behind all that and to see where we can map our ways to each other's hearts. And from there, anything is possible. So the third tool is create safety and trust. Regulate the nervous system, meet the others where they are, create safety and trust. How do you invite those people in that meeting, Ashley, that you make sure that everyone's feeling safe so they don't go back into a fight, flight, freeze response? And then the last one is get collaborative buy-in. How do you then realize through a series of processes that the solution you come up with is going to be so strong and resilient if it's coming from everyone involved, because it's got diverse input. So there's a richness. To me, if I were to walk into that group, I would just think, what a rich experience that people are so fundamentally different. And each one of them is going to play a piece in this, is going to bring a piece of the puzzle for a solution that probably hasn't even been invented yet. That's where we're at our time. I think it's a miraculous time we're in. A miraculous time where it in essence, and I've said this for decades, the bad news is that the systems as we know them are breaking down. The good news is that the systems as we know them are breaking down.
Yeah.
We're in an evolutionary moment, and the media doesn't tell us about it because it's not sexy. It's not profitable. But I can tell you with my work around the world, there are millions of organizations and individuals who are devoting their lives to the healing of the planet, to global unity, to peace, to eliminating hunger and disease. It's happening. And because we don't see it on our social media feeds doesn't mean it's not happening. And it's just a question of we're moving through a process of deep shifting. And I always say, because for me, the universe is always about contraction and expansion. I've never given birth to a child in this lifetime, but it's the same thing, is that you got to have the contractions to get the expansion. And my belief is that more of a contraction you have, the bigger the expansion we're going to have.
Mm-hmm.
So we're in for a big expansion.
Wow. Having given birth to a 9.5-pound son, I can just tell you that last point was like, oh.
With the big head.
Yes, Charlie Brown, basically.
Wow.
But what a great message.
And I keep saying, I think humanity does advance, but I think that advancement is often like 10 steps forward and 6.75 back. And so, and you have 3.25 advancement, and there's a lot of mess in that. And because I do think part of what we're seeing today is, Barack Obama said in a book I read, and I can't remember which one, he's like, Trump is my fault. Trump exists because of me, a black man getting elected, probably when America wasn't quite ready for it yet. And then around him, there was a narrative of, and he was kind of like pushing people to be a better version of themselves. And I think some of what Trump is sort of like, hey, that uppity black guy told me to be better, and I don't want to be better. Who is he to tell me? And so we're seeing this backlash of people saying, I'm sick, and we're calling it anti-woke. But a lot of it is just like, stop telling me to be a better person. I don't want to be told to be better. And so that's part of the sloppiness, I think.
And they're feeling some sort of loss, whether real or perceived. So now they're aggrieved, anyway, we get into that victim cycle. I know we're past our time with you, Joe, and it is
way past your bedtime.
I'm still on West Coast time. Otherwise I probably would be like, but I want one more thought here. We have a question from Doadir, who posted in the chat. I have a son with whom I can't seem to find common ground. And I'm just thinking about the holidays. Thanksgiving's coming up. This is going to be a hard couple of weeks / couple of months for people like re-engaging with their families over this really divisive stuff. Like just a couple of words of advice for people who are like want to see that, that pattern reverse in some way.
Well, there's a lot of things. I usually put out some points for that. First of all, is make sure you feel safe. Just make sure you feel safe, and have a few friends, allies that aren't there, that you can know that they're available. That if you just need someone that resonates with you, that aligns with you, that you can call them when you're feeling frustrated or alone, and just set clear boundaries. Just know that you have right to say yes. You have a right to say no, exclamation point, and you have a right to say no, comma, and, right? And what I mean by that is, sure, let's have that conversation, or to say absolutely not. Or you can say another no is, I'm willing to have a conversation. However, I would want to set up some guidelines to make sure it's done in a respectful way. And I also say is that, I've coached people in this who have had situations like this, where in the end, at one point when it was getting heated, is to just say, I just want you to remember I love you. And I wanted to remember that 10 years ago, we were having fun with each other. Let's just remember that 10 years ago, we had fun with each other. We would hang out and watch TV together. And maybe we're not doing that now, but I'm appealing to that part of you. It's bold, but it works. It cuts right through. Is to just say, let's remember that we loved each other and that we still love each other and that it's different, but let's remember that we had fun.
And would you agree, because I do tell people this, there is a point where it's okay to say to family, I can't be around you anymore.
I can't be around you at this moment. Do you hear the difference?
Yeah. Yeah.
In this moment, I can't be around you. And what I would say that the most compassionate thing to say in that is because I don't feel safe at the moment. It's not because I think you're a bad person or you're evil. That no, right? That's not in alignment with probably who you are. Not you, but someone who says that. But to say right now, so close after this election, I am in such a fear state. I can't be around you right now. I hope that changes. And if you want to help me change that, if you're really concerned about me and want to be with me, and I can see that you really want to help me help create safety and trust, I'll do it. But right now, I can't do it in this moment.
Well, good stuff, Joe. Let's tell people where they can find you. We have... Well, you tell, and I'll just put up the graphics here on the live stream.
JoeWeston.com is where you got a whole bunch of stuff about me and the work I do in the network and in individual coaching and training and organizations and humanitarian organizations. FierceCivility.org is more the humanitarian work of cultivating these skills to be a global citizen for beneficial change.
And let's add that Fierce Civility is the most recent book. Is that right?
Yes, it's going to be published in Italy. It's going to come out in Italian
nice.
In about a month. The Fierce Civility is the newest book. Mastering Respectful Confrontation is the first book. I also am doing something called the Occupy Your Heart movement. So go to occupyhere.com, and one thing we're doing is it's helping people in a moment to moment. How can you connect with people from a heart resonance, from this place of connection? And we're selling T-shirts, Occupy Here T-shirts and mugs.
I'm trying to find it. Where is it?
Oh no, it's great for the holidays. Actually, the books and it's a T-shirt that has a heart that says Occupy Here on it. If you find
and I've got it here somewhere to show. Oh, there it is. Okay, there it is.
Hey, there you go. There you go.
And occupyhere.com is where they go to get the T-shirt.
Yes. Yeah. And feel free to get in touch if you have more questions. And the TED Talk is a cure for chronic niceness. I love talking with you guys. Let's do this more. Let's just keep doing
1,000%. We basically need to dominate the rest of your life. So
Okay.
everything
Just
you
my
do.
Wednesday evenings for
Yeah,
now.
exactly.
Yes.
No, so it's so rich and exciting. Thank you for sharing with us tonight.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the beautiful work you're, and thank you for what what you have held for so long in helping uplift people and elevate people to their best selves, and on so many levels, and what you're continuing to do. I really feel grateful and honored to know you.
Thank you.
Yeah. And back at you. So glad
Very
to be your friend, and thank you for staying up late for us.
Yeah.
Go to bed.
All right.
Okay.
Good night, Joe. We'll see you again. Oh, that was fun. That was fun and challenging. And I'm sitting here, my wheels are still turning and also.
I mean, like watching my own facials as Joe was talking, I was like, oh shit. Like we got some self-reflection to do. No, but it's really, 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 really powerful stuff.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Do you want to do what's on my mind?
I do. I have to tell you this crazy story that happened yesterday.
Okay.
And it's like all in this like conflict domain. I mean, this conflict erupted before my very eyes. I was a bystander, and it just goes to show you like, oh my gosh, if you could just like wrap people, they were like on fire, and I just wanted to like wrap a blanket around them and like stop, drop, and roll. So this is what happened. My colleague and I get in a cab yesterday at our hotel. I'm gonna describe the cab driver and then another person involved in this incident by gender and racial ethnicity, because it's very relevant to the story. So we get in the cab, and it's an older Indian man that's driving.
Okay.
We take off away from the curb of the hotel. Another driver comes along on the right, cuts him off, and then jumps into the far left lane where this driver, our cab driver, was also going to get us where we're trying to go. The person who cut him off then comes to a screeching halt in front of our cab driver, and before flipping the U-turn, rolls down the window, leans out the window. It's a Black young woman, and yells at the cab driver, "Back up." The cab driver sits perfectly still, says nothing, does nothing. The lady doubles down. "Back up." Then I'm telling you, in like 5 seconds time, she is like to 10,000 on the radio. "Back up, you motherfucker. You can't understand me. What's wrong?" I mean, and she is just like hurling all kinds of insults and like insulting this man to all this kind of stuff. Okay. So then the cab driver starts yelling back at her, "Fuck you. You think you own this place?" He says, "Go back to the jungle. And blah, blah, blah. And this is what's wrong."
And you're sitting in the back seat.
Oh my God. I and my colleague are sitting in the back seat, two little white girls, and we're like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" And then the person in the car in front of us gets out of the car and walks right up to the side of the cat, and the windows roll down, and she leans down in his face, and she's like yelling at him, "You fucker, I said back up. What's wrong with you? Blah, 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 blah." And then this man is like, and so now I'm like, literally, my life is flashing before my eyes. I'm just like, oh my God, what if someone has a weapon? So I just start like saying very calmly to the driver, "Sir, it's okay. You know, it's all right, sir. We're fine to take more time. Please, sir, please, darling, please. It's okay. It's okay." I'm making eye contact with the lady.
You were trying to be a bridge builder.
I was literally like,
or were you trying to just submit to?
Well, I feel like it was just very surreal. And like part of me was like, what movie are we in right now? Because it's like, no, how can you be that mad that fast? So anyway, finally, so then the woman like smacks the guy's car and pops his mirror, right? And then, so at that point, it's like, "Please, sir, just please take us to our location." So finally he pulls away, and now I'm trying to calm him down because I'm thinking he's just, his whatever amygdala is like firing on all cylinders. So I'm just like, "Sir, I'm sure that was so frustrating, but we're okay. Thank you so much." And da 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 da. Then he just like racist screeds us all the way to our location. Like, "That's why we don't pick up people like that." And da da da. Anyway, I just thought to myself, Lord God Almighty, like, what and it just, there's just something about the environment we're in, and here we're like sitting in our nation's capital with this happening. And all this to say, I was shook and really wanting to talk to Joe Weston. Glad I listened to him tonight.
Well, you know what our daughter says, who is now living in New Jersey after most of her life being a West Coaster, is in New Jersey, as you're driving, you're much more likely to get honked at and cussed at on the road, but they're actually much more courteous drivers. LA.
Yeah. She said they get over it quickly. It's like,
they just get over it.
And then like, you'll pull up next to them and be like, hey, what's up? Like they rage and then they calm down. So it's possible that's some of it, but in fact, the cab driver said something like, I'm sorry you had to see that. He says, we deal with that all the time. So again, I think that was like a racist thing too, but like, we deal with that all the time. I'm used to it, but I know that was scary for you. And, at that point, we're just like, get us out of this flippin' cab.
Interesting. Oh, wow. Okay.
That was an intense day yesterday.
Well, what's on my mind is the humorous side of what the next 4 years is going to look like from a political perspective at the national level. So we can look at, and you and I are on a text string where people were talking about the fact that Matt Gaetz, Matt fucking Gaetz, the guy that got something done to his face that has made him look like the Joker, is going to be nominated to be the Attorney General, the top lawyer in the country. And so I was thinking about like, okay, this is horrifying and he's going to do terrible things. But at the same time, it's like a horrible, it's like, it's almost like Schitt's Creek. It's like Green Acres. It's like you're in this unreal world where everybody is doing crazy, nutty things. And you're the one normal person going, wait a second, somebody's going to stop this, right? Like somebody's going to say, there's no fucking way Matt Gaetz should be the Attorney General, right? Like somebody's going to step up and say, this is ridiculous. And I just feel like that's the bizarro upside down world we're going to live in for the next 4 years. And so there's a part of me that kind of wants to find humor in it, even, and maybe, again, that's me talking from a place of privilege that I can do that. But it was so bizarre. I almost can't think of anybody worse that Trump could have thought, yeah, let's pick that person to be AG.
I can't really process. Like I cannot ingest and like really evaluate and internalize and consider that. And it's been interesting the last couple of days. I've been here in DC with some really amazing nonprofits, kind of think tank, community development type groups. And to a person, the reaction, because these headlines are hitting, we're in these meetings and, these are people that have been involved in leadership circles.
A Fox News weekend morning show host as Secretary of Defense.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'm hearing from people, it's a surprise to me, is basically like, I cannot do shock and outrage for 4 years straight like I did for one. I can't do it. I'm not going to. And you know what? That's kind of like the shock and outrage fueled, like that's the like own the libs thing. It fueled all that. So there's a weird, just like, well, let's see what happens next. It's a very different reaction, I would say, than what happened last time around.
Well, I was listening to the Bulwark the other day, and they were like, maybe everybody effed up stopping him from burning it all to the ground 4 years ago.
Give him the leash, right? Just go. Yeah.
So now maybe give him the matches and the gasoline and turpentine and rags and say,
yep,
have fun, brother. And
now I feel like, though, we very quickly moved on from the very soulful, balanced moment we were having with Joe Weston. So I'm doing my like meditation like posture right now.
Well, and that's why I was trying to look at it from a humor perspective of like, you can't make this stuff up. This is, and I struggle with a show like Schitt's Creek because it's very funny, but my justice parts are like, wait, no, that's not fair. You can't do that. Even as a kid watching the, Roadrunner, I was like, I want the coyote to catch him at some point.
That's so funny. I felt that way too, actually, as a kid.
Yeah.
Always like the underdog, come on, let him have a win. Right.
Yeah. Let the rocket not blow him up this time. But, so I did have a moment where I was just laughing like, oh my God, what fucking world am I living in?
Well, I have to say, Joe's line about the systems are breaking down. So we're either breaking down or breaking through. I think, appointments that are as inexperienced, like just objectively, like very inexperienced people, like being like, sure, here, take all this power and authority. It's like, obviously these systems, these governmental systems are breaking down. So maybe there's like the silver lining is like, okay, so now we get our breakthrough,
Okay. Interesting. Ethan in the live stream here says that Coyote did catch Roadrunner once and he let him go.
So we need to do some research on that and consult the interweb and perhaps find out. I don't remember that. That's fun.
I mean, because if the coyote, there is this knowledge that if the coyote ever does catch the Roadrunner, the show's over.
Right.
Like the show ends, and but I do my little justice part is like, come on.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway, Matt Gaetz is a clown creature, and so there is a part of me that's like, oh, this is actually going to be kind of grotesquely fun to watch, except for the fact that actual human beings are going to really get hurt in the middle of it all. But yes, I think Joe's statement of bad news systems are breaking down, good news systems are breaking down really does go with my theory of like, sometimes calamity has to come and things have to collapse for change to come.
Yeah.
So,
Anyway, that was a phenomenal discussion. I'm going to buy every book. You know me. I will.
Yeah, you will. Speaking of books, by the way, I got this in the mail today. You Lied to Me About God.
Oh, I can't wait to read that one.
And the author, Jamie Marich, is going to be our guest on December 4th.
Okay.
And that's going to be amazing. And then next Tuesday, we're going to be on because Wednesday will be getting us close to Thanksgiving. So I don't remember.
It's something else. I can't remember what it is, but we're still a week and a half away from Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that's true.
I think it's some like other conflict we had. So Tuesday of next week is when we're going to do the show, right?
We're going to be on next Tuesday, and we're going to have Naomi Weens, who is a therapist and trauma specialist, and she is going to talk about getting prepared for the holidays and regulating ourselves as the holidays are approaching. So that's going to be a great conversation as well.
Is it just me? Has anybody noticed that we've had an incredible string of guests, like for week after week after week? I just like am so impressed and grateful. Like there have been incredible people that have been coming on with us.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's just, me and my little lonesome, but I think this podcast kind of is kicking ass right now. So, if you haven't already, subscribe. Go to our YouTube channel, or you can go to evangelicalish.com. Make sure you're signed up for the newsletter. I have become the person who makes the appeal every week because in my day job, I'm actually a fundraiser. I love to ask people to give to things that are in alignment with their spirit and their heart. If it's not in alignment, you should not give. But if you're finding that this place is a place of alignment and connection for you, then you should really consider giving $5.99 a month. It's just a little tiny bit that goes a long way. What we do every week is pretty cheap, but it's not free. And we're coming out of pocket. And we'd like to be able to cover our costs and even be able to compensate at least Paul's time a little bit for putting all that he does into this space and this show. So consider $5.99 a month. And it'd be really cool to say that, like, I don't know, maybe 20 or 30% of the people who regularly download also support us. That would be an amazing thing. But again, only if it's in alignment with your heart. Because if it's not, we don't want your money. We want the connection and the alignment. So there you go. I did the pitch.
I love it. And, I constantly am getting, comments and messages from people saying, you're a grifter and George Soros is paying you to do what you do. And I'm like, well, when does
that were true?
When does that check show up? Like, I haven't got that check.
I'm not saying we wouldn't cash it, but the thing is that check has not arrived.
If the phone ain't ringing, it's George Soros calling with a donation. So we ain't seen that check yet. And maybe what's on my mind in the future will have to be how Anna Kasparian from the Young Turks is going right winger, because right wing podcasting is where the bucks are, my friend, and that's why a lot of liberal podcast hosts are going right winger these days. So.
Well, that fact alone, like, we are unpersuaded. Obviously, we are unfunded and unpersuaded. But I also think it's true that, again, like, we would not, like, we want dollars. I believe, like, money has emotion and soul tied to it. So, like, we only want to be partnering with people whose hearts are aligned with ours anyway. So anyway, yes, that Stephanie says what in the chat, like, question mark, exclamation, question mark. Yeah, we'll have to cover that next time.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. If you're looking for information on it, you can go to the Sam Cedar and Emma Vigland Majority Report, I think is the name of their podcast, and they've been talking.
Do they still have her on the Young Turks though? Like, with this coming out?
I think so, but I think it's getting tenuous, and I doubt she's going to be on there much longer.
A little expose,
which I'm so sad, because she's brilliant and it's
really talented. And
I really did love the Young Turks, and it's fallen apart. But I do like Sam Cedar and Emma Vigland over on the Majority Report too. So we'll go there, and there are good podcasts out there. But I am now really starting to try to say, okay, what can I even listened to a true crime series the other day, because like what can I listen to other than political podcasts? Because I'm a little bit done right now with.
I know.
As much as I love Tim Miller, I'm a little done with the Bulwark.
I've been off for a week. Like, I have not been listening to my usual, and Paul knows this. I love all caps, highlight, underscore. I love me some Morning Joe.
You do love Morning Joe.
And you know what? I haven't been able to watch. Like, I just can't. I'll get back to it, but I can't. But I will say one thing, like, crime. Yeah, this is an interesting. It's kind of a crime story, but it is also a little political. I found this really great podcast by Tortoise Media called Elon's Spies. Elon's Spies. It's only 3 episodes. It's very good. It's done by some British journalists, and it's kind of a little twist. It's still very relevant, obviously, but a little twist on daily consumption.
Oh, wow. Yeah, there and I love, Slow Burn has 10 seasons of really amazing stuff. And so there is good stuff out there.
All our favorites, Slow Burn. What else do we love? Throughline.
Throughline has really good stuff.
Prequel, all the Rachel Maddow stuff is brilliant beyond. So well done.
Yep.
Okay. We did an extra little what's on our mind, what we're listening to.
Well, and I was going to say one other thing, and Stephanie, I'm sorry, Stephanie, I didn't get your question in front of Joe necessarily about the fear of, real fear of harm coming in the season. And one of the things I'm seeing from people like the Bulwark and is, and even from Morning Joe guests, is, we've got to stop focusing on things like trans issues. Nobody cares about that stuff. And that's why we lost the election. And I think first off, I think that's untrue. And I think that is a backlash of things we're going to see in this season, where people are like, we gotta get more mean like the other side, and I hate that. I think it's not kind of the way to go. But anyway, we're over time, and I guess it's late for you.
Yeah. Okay. Bye, everybody. See you Tuesday of next week. And again, don't forget to subscribe and support evangelicalish.com. We are grateful for all of you, and we're getting through all this together. So thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah. And if you go to ish.com and click on the schedule, I'm getting better now at putting ahead who's coming up. And so you can always go to YouTube and click subscribe, and then have that notification bell that will tell you when we're on live, and you will never miss it. So love y'all. We'll see you next Tuesday. And you can listen to this on Apple or Spotify and all the places where you get your podcasts.